Hi, thank you for watching this video. I hear people say a lot that communism killed 20 million, 100 million people, something like that. And while I agree that communism is it can be an awful economic system. However, this idea has been used to justify some really awful policies too, like privatized prisons, lack of universalized health care. Pretty much, there are a lot of people out there who think socialism is everything the government does that they don't like. They have no problem with the government invading all these countries, but if the government happens to help poor people out, they have a big problem with it. So, I am not defending communist China or Stalinist Russia or anything like that. People did starve in them countries, some awful things did happen. But people do kill each other in the pursuit of profit, not just governments. So when did capitalism start? People have been trading forever. In China, the emperor traded with other nations. It wasn't until relatively late in history, in the Western world, that people started trading purely for the pursuit of profit. When the aristocracy became second fiddle to the merchant class, the bourgeoisie. Now, believe it or not, this happened earlier in the Muslim world. Merchants were very honored in the Muslim world, and they pursued profit without relatively autonomously from governments. And it was medieval monks that actually came up with what we know as capitalism today. They grew grapes and things like that and traded them. And capitalism, as we know today, was born out of colonial mercantilism. The transatlantic slave trade. Millions of people were enslaved, killed, and brought to the United States in the pursuit of profit. Cold hard cash. 20 million to 100 million Native Americans were killed in the United States. Now, it was governments that came over here most of the time, but the United States expanded westward in large part because in the pursuit of profit. The gold rush in California and the western part of the country, the railroads that were built, the British East India Company, a corporation that was somewhat public, somewhat private, but still in the pursuit of property, in the pursuit of profit, killed tens of millions of people. In particular, the Great Bengal Famine of 1770 was straight out of Mao Zedong's playbook, really. It was mismanagement of markets and people and everything. And just like government can mismanage things, so can corporations. That's why we need to hold corporations and governments accountable, we the people. So capitalism. People say that communism is all about central planning. Well, so is capitalism. McDonaldization. McDonald's in Alaska looks the same as McDonald's in Texas. They look all the same all around the world. Pretty much in China, the hamburgers taste the same wherever you go. These things are centrally planned. It's just like communism in many ways. What's the sociologist George Ritzer, he wrote about this in his book, The Globalization of Nothing. So what's the answer to, big government and big business? I like the idea of local. I like the idea of trying to buy local and help local business, help small business, and keeping power local for the most part. Although that can have its problems too. We need to stop invading all these countries too. I mean, we live in this really strange world where the largest capitalist country in history owes the largest communist country in history, China, the largest trade deficit in history. We talk about welfare mooches. We're the biggest mooch in the world. We're mooching off this communist state, really. It's really absurd. And at the same time, communist countries supposed to be really good to its workers, and China's not good to its workers. That's what socialism is really all about, according to Karl Marx, is the working class getting what they deserve. Under capitalism, people often, and he wrote about this, and the ruling class doesn't want people to know this. The filthy rich don't want you to know this, but Karl Marx wrote about how the working classes were being screwed over by the capitalists, and they needed to rise up and take over the government or even the factories they worked at and have real political power, to have true democracy. And, people talk about socialism, it's stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. Where have I heard that before? That sounds like a Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. It's absurd. And under capitalism, do people always get what they deserve, what they work for? Not always. Did Paris Hilton work hard for what she has today? Kim Kardashian, look at how absurdly rich these people are. All because of capitalism, not because they really worked hard. And that's, there's white affirmative action in this country too. That's when a white guy goes to Yale or Harvard simply because his daddy did and his granddaddy did. The best example of this is George H.W. Bush. That's right, I get the two mixed up all the time. Yeah, capitalism, in many ways, it's produced a great abundance of goods and services, and it meets people's needs in great ways. But at the same time, we need to hold the big corporations and the CEOs of these companies accountable. Now, theoretically, we hold the politicians accountable at the ballot box, am I correct? Yes, we do. It doesn't always work out right. But how do we hold the corporations accountable? Well, we could choose to buy or not buy certain goods and services. We could choose to shop at certain places and not at certain other places. I try not to shop at Walmart. I do, but I try not to because it's unethical in many ways. But yeah, people think that capitalism is infallible. Money theism, I call it. I'll say something to them like, yeah, look at our capitalist system. They buy out these politicians. The politicians are owned by big corporations, and then, these politicians, they'll work as politicians, and then they'll be lobbyists after they stop being politicians. That's absurd. And they'll say something to me like, oh, that's not capitalism, that's corporatism. Real capitalism is infallible. The hand of the free market belongs to Yahweh himself, to God. It's like, no, capitalism is imperfect, just like communism. And my main thing right now is that I want universalized healthcare here in the United States. Okay? Corporations are running away to Western Europe and socialist countries. Why? Well, lower taxes for one. For two, the workers, they don't need to pay for their workers' health care insurance. It's a lot cheaper for them because workers are insured under the government. And believe it or not, you're more free when you have health care insurance too. You're not like, oh, I need to stay at my job because there's health care insurance here. You're free to leave your job. You could be more individualistic when your needs are met. How could you be individualistic when you have these low wages and you're a slave to your job? That's collectivistic right there. Hardcore capitalism results in collectivism. People don't realize that. Oh, and I get a kick out of these people who say, SJWs tear people apart and they're collectivists. No, dummy. Collectivism would put people together. Individualism would tear people apart. You need a balance of the two, really. What? Someone's going to take that out of context and say, individualism is infallible. Knuckleheads. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, vote, and comment. Have a good day. Took a little bit of time off, but I'm back.